Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I am here with Scott Snyder. Congratulations, man. And how are you?
I'm doing good, man. The world's on fire, but we're hanging in there with comics. I feel like it's a great space to sort of be pouring all those emotions, and there's so many good ones out right now that it's a great time to be a part of it.
Hell yeah. Congratulations on all the success on Absolute Batman, The Absolute Line. Absolute Batman 2 just dropped. As of the taping of this episode, it was yesterday, and great book, great buzz. People are excited, not just about Batman, but so far, all the Trinity that was released and what's to come. We'll talk all about that.
I feel
How
like
do you feel so far?
Oh man, I'm like, I mean, I know I'm really blown away, honestly. Like I know that it might sound corny, but I mean it. Like we were modestly hopeful about an Absolute Line doing well, and I was confident that we could sort of just outpace some of DC's expectations, but the success of it really caught me off guard. So the fact that we're closing in on 370 something, and Superman and Wonder Woman are both 200, and all of that was like any one of those would be way above anything that we expected. But the collective success really speaks to, I think, the amazing kind of fans that we have out there, not just for DC, but for comics in general. And I think it's indicative of this moment. Like, I really feel excited and proud to be part of this particular, I feel like, kind of time in comics, like this crossroads right now.
Oh yeah. When we were at New York Comic Con, we were talking about, you were particularly talking about like how influential the creator space is right now, and how it's really the creator's time again for comics, where it's very creator focused and creator driven, and how exciting that is, and how, of course, how beneficial that is for not just publishers but for the audience as well. And it was a good point to make, and I'm sure you were excited because at New York Comic Con you got to see firsthand people's response to the debut issue, but we hadn't seen Wonder Woman or Superman yet.
Yeah, God, I forgot. It's flying by so fast.
I know, right?
Yeah, it was wild. It was the biggest crowd I've ever had at New York. I mean, I really, again, like, did not expect that. Did not expect the sales to sort of, again, like, all of it caught me off guard. Again, like my confidence in the book was high when it comes to the amazing work that Nick is doing, Frank is doing, the colorist Frank Martin, the letterer Clayton Cowles, our editor Katie Kubert, and I'm really proud of the writing. I'm proud of the book, but you never know. I mean, there's been plenty of books that I've been like, this is one of the things I'm proudest of, and I think it's gonna not take off in a huge way, but do well, and then the market isn't there for it, or that kind of stuff. So you never know. But with this one, I really was kind of, well, I was surprised, like, pleasantly, but more than anything, like you and I talk offline, but like when we were there, being able to really see the enthusiasm, not just for this, but for G.I. Joe, for the Energon universe, for Turtles, for Marvel, for the Ultimate Universe there, for ASM, for indie stuff that's blowing up too, like all, like, it just feels like a great moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's corny, but like, again, like, it really feels like the last 2 years, one of the reasons we wanted to do this was because people kept saying, oh, it's a down moment in comics. And it's a down moment in comics. And did we talk about this when you and I spoke? I can't remember what we said online and what we said offline.
I know, right? Well, to that point, I've definitely been on record talking about how there is like a lack of enthusiasm, or at least there had been over the last couple of years. Like, there's just lack of hype. Hype was absent in comics. And yet I think you definitely agree with this, the fact that, like, it's never been a better time to read some of the best comics. Like, there are outliers. Yeah. There are examples throughout our history, just enjoying comics in general, of like fantastic exalted books. But like, just the sheer volume of just hit after hit after hit creatively is just unprecedented, I think.
Yeah, and I think like, I did a lot of thinking about it when they in the lead up to New York Comic Con, they asked me to speak at this retailer event. I don't remember if you were at this one, but it was sort of a dinner for retailers, and it was all about like excitement in the market. And so I was doing like a deep dive on the last like 15 years in comics, just sales. And it was really interesting because it felt like, when I came into DC it was just like paper and ink on 53rd Street and Broadway, and there was no parent company. And then within a year or two, it was like Warner Brothers bought DC, and Marvel was bought by Disney, and DC was moved out to the West Coast. And there was all this excitement, and there was, a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of money. There was a lot of support from Warner Brothers because they had the movies coming out, and so you could do the New 52, and you could have these giant initiatives, and then the new Office was amazing, where they had and then similarly, like right after that, as all the movies were taking off, The Walking Dead really hit, and all of a sudden Image and indie companies had this whole new level of solvency and success, and you could go over and do an indie comic and make more than you could in the big two. And so that market was suddenly huge, and then there were speculators around that, and then streaming came in, and then all of a sudden there are all these companies that have money because they have investment from that or tech, and then COVID, like weirdly, COVID was a big spike for us after the initial shutdown, because all these people had disposable income and they started betting on, variant covers. And so 2021 was like one of the biggest superhero moments we had at DC and Marvel. And so what I'm getting at is that we've actually been living in this weird inflated market for the last like 15 years almost. Yeah. And it's almost been like functioning at this peak that is all it's propped up by real things like real money, but it's not like the core market. And so to call this market the down market the last few years was part of the impetus of doing the initiative. And one of the things that was fascinating was like, when I signed on to do it, I did sort of like a tour of different, not physically, but a calling tour and Zooming tour with different retailers. Some of the biggest like in the country, like Third Eye and Midtown and these. And I spoke to a bunch of them, and were like, and some of the distributors like Lunar and DCBS, and was like, we want to do a big initiative where we do all kinds of superhero comics, different kinds, but what size do you think will work? Like, should we do it small? Should we do it medium? And they were like, no, you need to go big and do all of it at once. And we were like, but it's a down market. The market might not support it. And their mantra, especially the stores, was like, if you build something where you're excited and you go out and hype it for real, they will show up and sell better than they have even during these peak times. And so for all of the kind of trumpeting of the sales of the Absolute line and the bump that the main line has gotten, like Justice League also Unlimited way outsold projections for Mark and Dan. The excitement for me, the honest truth is that the real like thing that makes me so thrilled to be a part of this thing is that, to me, it's a validation that the real core comic market is always there and as strong as ever. You have to not be afraid to take big swings, because when you take a big swing, they show up. And historically, one of the weirdest things was looking and seeing, that Marvel, like you think about the 80s, that's when like Dark Knight came around, when comics were slumping, or Heroes Reborn in the 90s, or, Marvel Knights. I mean, and then literally like you come around and you get Jeff Johns in the early 2000s, and you get Bendis when both companies are sort of tanking. And Marvel, but Brian talks about him thinking as he got to the office, they were selling the furniture, and he thought it was the last Marvel comics they were going to make. And so it's at these moments when there's I think a perception of the market or comics as low, that it excites creators to take the challenge, because they get a little more freedom, because there's a little bit less like oversight. And then on top of that, fans are just hungry to prove that comics are alive and well, and they want really good stuff. And so this moment in particular, and the explosiveness, not just of the sales and the success of DC, but to see it all across the line at like Marvel and Image and IDW and Boom with Something Is Killing the Children and all these books, like it's just a great moment. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's really exciting to be one part of that. And that's that was like, I just gave you like my keynote speech for my retailers, but I was more fiery and a little tipsy. So
that does help. But it also
the midday kitchen version of it.
Well, it bears repeating, and I think it's important to note, because it's easy to get cynical about this industry and about the enthusiasm or lack thereof when comics is a kind of solitary experience, despite the fact that I think you're kind of touching on that point, the fact that comics just generally are a collaborative experience, despite the fact that we call it a solitary experience. Obviously, reading, unless you're reading with a group, you're reading by yourself, you're isolated. But comics overall is about community, and it is about like pulling that community together.
It is, and we're all friends. I mean, not in like a kumbaya, we all love each other
Right.
way, but you know, nobody gets into comics for the fucking money. I mean, there's no. Sometimes you luck out. Like I've done very well from comics. I'm very like very lucky, and but it's not that. Like everybody that works in comics does it. There's still no security. Like I might do well, but who knows? Like I have no health insurance from comics or any
Right.
of that. So I'm not. All I'm trying to say is that nobody, even the most successful people, aren't doing comics for money or for safety or for that. Everybody is in it for love of comics and for love of storytelling to some extent. And whether that's editorial, whether that's creative, whether that's sales, like there's no point. People don't stay in it that don't care about it. And so it is a community of that, like all across, and people do cycle through. So you do see somebody like Chris Conroy, who was my editor all the way back when I was starting on American Vampire with Doyle, and he was like an assistant, is now, running Vertigo and one of the head editors at DC. Or, Mark Doyle, who was it IDW? Was it this? Like, I'm just saying everybody cycles around.
Exactly.
And so as much as it's like, oh, Marvel is competitive with us. No, it's not. Like Jerry Duggan is one of my close friends, as is Dan Slott, and we help each other and we read each other's stuff sometimes and all that. So it's not that we all want all of us to succeed. None of us are like, I mean, I'm sure there are definitely some assholes that are like, fuck that, do it, fuck that company, whatever. But I mean, overall, it really is just a bunch of people trying to make this industry stronger in good faith.
Yeah.
So moments like these are very validating for all of us to see when everyone, the wisdom is like, because I'll shut up about it, but like, I feel really strongly about it in that some of the advice we got when we were doing All In was very much like, look, the trends have changed. People don't buy comics every week anymore. They don't want to go to the store every week anymore. They're more, event buyers once a month. So we need to put everything that's new in one day of a month and make it own that day. And, it was very hard at first to sort of to break that thinking and say, look, we really believe that comic fans are just looking for the tiniest excuse to go to the store every week.
Yeah.
And because they want to. And the more that you calcify these bad habits and say, what week is like a big other company book coming out? Let's make our book that week too, so we know they're going there, and let's all just make the first Wednesday of the month. The more you're just hurting everything. And so, you've got to have faith that the buyers and the fans, like, they want to go there. Like, I want to go to my store. All you have to do is give me the tiniest incentive, and like I'll go every week. So it's more like don't feed into the idea that people are want to go less. Try and assume that they want to go more.
Yeah.
And just spread the books out and give them reason, like the Justice League cards or just silly things that are fun to be able to be like, go every week, have fun, enjoy your LCS.
Yeah, create an event out of it and make people, excited about going and being part of the community. It's funny you mentioned that like there was a prevailing wisdom that said put everything on one day, because one of the main criticisms that I've seen on my weekly show where we talk about like the books that are coming out every week is like, oh no, what a heavy week this is. Things have to get cut. Like some things have to get cut because people have like portioned out their budget and they're like, too many books I want to buy are coming out on 1 week. And it's like, dude, if you spread it out, you're going to get more people to get more of the books. I mean, you have magnet books, you have tentpole books that do get people in the shop. But like, if you, like you said, if you give people an excuse, they will come back, or at the very least, they'll put it on, the next one. But
exactly, man. I mean, I feel like we moved out here to where we live out in the North Shore of Long Island when I was like in my early 20s. We got married young, and we moved out when my wife got into medical school. And we had like one crappy car that we shared, and we lived in like a total shithole condo. And she took the car to go to school, and so I was like completely miserable and alone and like working on stories and trying to break into comics. And I remember like one of the first things that I did when we moved out here was like search for comic stores, and I found Fourth World, where I've been going there since then, since long before I broke into comics, and it's the same family run store, a lot of the same staff since then. And it was like a lifeline for me to be able to go and just talk about comics. and sit and read and have people who like the same things I did and cared about the same stories and were excited about the stuff coming out. And this was the era of like, it was the era of like the Jeff Johns rise and the early, the Bendis Avengers stuff and all of that too. And it was really exciting. And so I was a very nervous and nerdy and anxious kid. And I looked forward on Wednesdays when I was a kid to go to Forbidden Planet on 11th Street and Broadway with my father. And so the comic store as a place that isn't to go buy comics because there's an event or it's a begrudging thing.
Yeah.
But instead as a place to go for community, because you feel part of it, because you want to browse, like, because you want to, have the retailers and the staff tell you what's exciting and just breathe it all in. Like that to me is a core belief about what stores are, regardless of whether they sell Funkos or this or that. And to me, it's like, you don't need much of if you think of them like that, it's more just helping them, give people the tiniest, nudge to come in. And
Exactly.
they want to come in.
Yeah. I would love to talk a little bit about the second issue of Batman, because it was so cool and bombastic and epic. And I remember at New York Comic Con, you were like, dude, you need to see the issue because the Batmobile comes out. And not to switch gears too hard, but I know I'm just hey, man, like let's jump into it. But like after the success of the first issue and how, well oiled it is, like that book clearly, like a lot of time, effort, thought went into, because it's the debut. It was going to be the first issue of the Absolute line. Yeah. A lot was riding on it, so you had to make sure. But issue 2 is just as well oiled, just as well executed. And Dragata's art is just so polished and so exciting. It shoulder to shoulder with the first issue.
It gets better and better. He'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like he feels more and more comfortable drawing this Bruce, drawing this world every issue. So wait till you see we just finished issue 3, and issue 4 is Gabriel Walta, and then issue 5 he's started to work on now with me and Nick. And it's just killer. And issue 5, Batman really suits up to go to Throwdowns. There's a lot of cool, like, what's hidden in his cape kind of stuff, which I love. I just love that.
Now, there are a couple of moments in this issue in particular where, like, there are just awesome, fun, cool set pieces, like the aquarium sequence, or the building Batman AF sequence, or the Batmobile. When you write normally, and when you did this particular issue, do you have these moments in the back of your mind where you're like, I gotta find a place for me to get that, that building sequence, or are they intrinsically part of the story as you're writing the story?
Definitely the second. So it's more like, what I'm thinking is like, okay, what I need is a sequence at the beginning of this book that really caps off Batman being awesome and badass in a couple different ways. And I need one that's like tactile and small scale, that shows his smarts and his fighting. And then I need one that's going to be like epically large scale, to be like, because what I want is, I'm like, the beginning of this issue is Alfred thinking, he's going to stop. He's going to retreat. He's going to back off. He's going to realize he can't win this. And so it needs to escalate. And so I was like, well, what if I said it? And I was talking to Nick, and I'm like, we want hand-to-hand combat somewhere. And he was like, well, let's do it somewhere that has some aura and this. I'm like, all right, what about an aquarium? And he'll dump the fish and this. And then I was like, well, he needs to do something really scientific, though, something fun that isn't just brutish. And I was like, oh, I've read that you can turn this into hydrochloric acid, the salt water. So it was like that. And then he was like, okay, so that'll be like 5 pages. And I was like, no, dude, like, if we do this, it's got to all fit in. Like, he's got to do all this in like 3 pages, 4 pages. So Nick was like, I love it. Nick's like all about the density. And so it was like, then Alfred thinks, okay, well, but now they're going to find all his bases. There's no world in which he isn't going to get caught here. And then he doesn't care. He'll blow up his bases if you're coming at him. And so it's the feeling of, what am I trying to achieve with this scene writing wise, the sequence. I'm trying to show Bruce, you think he's going to give up small scale? No, he will not. You think he's going to give up big scale? No, he will not. And you got to end on an image that's like the most badass thing you could possibly imagine. And so all of that came in. And then when I was talking to Nick after we did the art, he was like, you gotta work in there somewhere where he's like, he's Batman as fuck. And I was like, Alfred wouldn't say that. Alfred is like this British spy. And then I was like, well, what if he says AF? What does that stand for? Well, advance forward. And I was like, advance forward, retreat. And so it all comes that way. It's more about what's the feeling? How are you trying to achieve this? And, and then at the end, again, I wanted it. The whole issue is, I'll tell you like one secret about the issues. Every issue, you see one panel or a couple of panels of like the plaque from the bat enclosure in the zoo.
Yes.
And sometimes they're hidden and sometimes they're more upfront, but they're thematically what the issue is about. So in this one, I think it's a little more upfront, but you see it and it says bats can be social or they can be loners. And so the whole issue is, Bruce deciding in some way to bring his friends in and also push them away in order to kind of get what he needs out of it.
Yeah.
The next issue, issue 3, there's a tiny little plaque that's like bats map everything with echolocation. And it's more about Bruce finally getting the big picture of how dangerous this gang is and how they're connected to things all over the world. And it's much bigger than what he thought.
Yeah.
And so, we really do try and talk every issue through and craft it based on what we're going for story-wise, and then build out the big set pieces through that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So it's like this issue needs to end with a big bang where it's like Alfred at the end of the issue finally thinks he's got friends, he's got family, he's going to cave. And then instead he advances forward in the Batmobile, even in a bigger way.
Yeah.
So
what was the thinking behind this Batmobile in particular? Like that
was Nick. Nick was like, because I was like, because I had this other idea, which now I'm going to spoil it, but we're going to use it. We're going to use it in an upcoming issue in the second arc. But we had this idea. Nick's sons love to, what's it called? When you race, but it's not, you race, it's like mini racing, but for real, you go like 60 miles an hour in I don't know. They race like I forget the name for the cars, but they race like real cars as kids.
Okay.
But a lot of it looks like almost like those dune buggies where it has the big wheels and a cage. And so I was like, well, what if Bruce built one that was like, could flip and it would still keep going, and it was the big tires, but it's like just this monster thing. And so we were working on that, and Nick was like, oh yeah, it's fast and it can roll over cars and this, but like, if what you're saying is you want him to be like, I only plow through things, what if he has like a monster elevated dump truck? And I was like, I don't know how big are those? And then he showed me a picture of, and they're like 3 stories tall. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know how he's going to do that. And he was like, well, what if it has like these engines in the back? So in 3, you actually see everything you see some of the stuff it does, cool, where you don't see it in 2, but it's got all kinds of fun stuff in it, that it is like a batarang machine gun and all this stuff. Like,
nice.
It's not, Alfred doesn't know what it is, and he takes it. He's like, what do you have for this kid? And he's like, pull that lever. And he's like, it's like, ka-chang, and it's non-lethal, but it's like, boom, 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 and it fires these electric batarangs, and it does all kinds of other stuff too. So I'm not spoiling too much, but it was like, Nick was like, well, if what you're trying to say is Bruce will always only advance forward, then let's make it this giant thing and put a spreader on the front. And I'll give the top of it, if you see it from the sky, it looks like the bat emblem on his chest. And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, dude, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like the dumbest, funnest thing. And I love it. And he's like, the only problem is like, how will he ever escape? Because it's so big. And I was like, I have an idea for that, so that we won't spoil it, but you'll see in issue 3.
That's great.
But it's so fun, dude. I go to work so happy on this series and excited on the series. And I'm just so grateful to DC for letting us go so nuts on it.
Well, and there's so many, like, one of the things that I think people are resonating so much with this book is the fact that it manages to scratch a lot of itches. Like, it's not just big, cool, bombastic moments, but those moments do hit, and they feel authentic and cool. But you also get these nice little quiet moments. Like, you have these sequences, obviously in the first issue with his mom, which I thought was just awesome. Even the origin sequence, which I don't think we've seen pretty much all of it yet, but even the first 2 pages, like we talked about it on another show, but it bears repeating that the Joe Chill sequence is phenomenal. And Thanks. It's just, it just hits so well. And works in so many different levels. But there are also these quiet moments. Like there's a moment that really sticks out with me, and I wanted to give the flowers to Frank Martin on the coloring, because the coloring has just been incredible. But
Incredible.
the Selena sequence, there's just a little like moment of
Yes.
Selena, and it's just like everything that it implies. It's literally one just quiet moment. And especially the fact that you followed the Batmobile moment with this other little quiet moment. I love how you balance those sequences. But I think people are responding to it because it's like, if it was all one thing, it would not appeal to everybody. But it's
Well, it's Capullo. I remember Capullo being like, "You can't only play the guitar solo, son." When we were on when we worked, because I was like, "And then this, and then explosion, and then this batarang, and then bat knife," and he was like, "Calm down." So, what I love about this book is that it really works the extremes. Like, so I haven't had a chance like in a long time on superhero books, because the last things that I wrote were like death metal and then those kinds of super bombastic things, and they certainly they're from the heart. Like death metal is all about how every story you've ever read matters, and it's inviting all fans in 2020 when everything was crazy. But that said, you don't have the same kind of oxygen and like spaciousness sometimes to do that needlework, and that fine point work. And here it's the most I've ever done. Like if there's a Jim Gordon scene, Martha scene in issue 2. That's like one of my favorite things that I've written in a long time, where it's just new, where all of a sudden you realize Martha and Jim know each other, and he knew Thomas, and they were young people, idealistic people in Gotham together 20 years ago. And they have history, and they're fucking funny and cool, and they're kind of old hippies, and and all of that was like, wow, it's coming to life for me. And that it was just so new, and everything is like that. And then balancing that with like Batman AF, I'm blowing up. That's the beauty of the book, is that it works for me, both those sets of muscles. And so the bombast is brand new because it's a different Batman, and then the emotion is surprising. Like there's a scene in 3 really really, you see a lot of Selena as a kid with Bruce. Like she takes him out on the roofs, and she takes him somewhere surprising, and sort of makes her point to him about kind of what she thinks he needs to do going forward. And there's that. And then in the present, there's a couple scenes. He goes to see Eddie, Edward Nygma, and they have a real connection where he's like, because Edward is super smart. It doesn't take him very long to realize what Bruce is up to. And so they have, and then there's a scene with Martha. And so there's really, every emotional scene is just completely different than anything I've tried, because it's all just new combinations.
It would never appeal. Like it would never happen in the other universe.
And then on the other side, you get like, Batmobile, machine gun, blah, 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 blah. And which is like, why would he ever have that? Well, he'd have it because he doesn't have any money, and so he'd be more, out there.
Yeah.
And so that's the DNA of the book, is that it's almost like that double helix of like absolute over the top fucking Batman, out of control, and really, really sort of, to me, like personal, powerful, emotional character work, and usually they're it's funny because some books don't give you the chance to like do the extremes at the same time. They're more in the middle together, like Black Mirror, or those, like they kind of more coexist, because they're of the same. But here they're pulled apart, and that's why it's like, the Batmobile smashing through everything, and that quiet moment with Selena. And it's just sort of like that rhythm is brand new too, and fun for me. I just love it.
Yeah,
I love it. What do you see Edward has like his own company where he's working on AI and all this stuff. And so he has like, he's trying to create this thing that essentially can answer everything in the world, and answer all the riddles and all the questions. And he has this kind of machine, and wherever he has a problem with it, he has a question mark on it, like written on it. So it has all these question marks on it and stuff. And so it's just so, and he's like, Bruce, don't ask me, ask this. Cause Bruce comes there to ask him about the Black Mask. And he's like, just humor me. And Bruce, I'm not talking to that thing. And he's like, Bruce, just please, if we're friends, like ask it, ask the answer, it's like, all right. So everything is new. That's what I mean. Like, it's just weird. I'm like, is this like, does this make any sense? But it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense for these characters in this world. So
Well, and I
yeah.
think your enthusiasm comes across, but also it is infectious and allows the audience to give themselves permission to be enthusiastic about it too, because they're like, "This is new, this is fresh, this does seem unfamiliar but familiar to me," and I'm giving myself permission to get excited or to be surprised by something that is as familiar as like Batman and
Yeah.
everything that implies. You must be so like over the moon with the reception for books like Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Superman. You're gonna have Kelly Thompson on your class. You're bringing back
Yeah,
like,
tonight.
writing
Yeah, if,
class.
I don't know when you can post this, but yeah, so I'm doing the class tonight. I'm excited, but Kelly is just amazing, and I honestly like. I really I'm as happy, if not happier, that Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Superman. There's excitement. Did as I mean, again, like our projections were modest. Like I know they don't like when we talk numbers, but like they were really hoping with Absolute Batman that we might hit 100,000. You know what I mean? So to or with Absolute Wonder Woman and Superman, it might near that or 80,000 or 70. Well, that was the bar,
Yeah,
the high bar. So to have all these books do as well as they did really is if not, it's probably a bigger thrill than seeing Absolute Batman do it, because I have the built-in kind of like, is he gonna fuck it up kind of readership that comes in, because like having done Batman before, so to see the excitement carry over to these books where it's really uncharted territory with great creators means a lot. And I can't say enough good things. Issue 3 of Absolute Wonder Woman is going to like blow your minds when you see. I won't give anything away for Kelly and Hayden, but like same thing actually. Issue 2 of Absolute Superman is out of control.
yeah.
But then the books we have coming too, like Absolute Martian Manhunter.
Oh yeah.
Is
Dennis Camp, Javier Rodriguez. That's going to be a great. Like I don't even know what to expect from that book. It looks insane.
You shouldn't, but it's like Dennis pitched it to me. We became friends because I really loved 20th Century Men and wrote him before he was doing Ultimates at Marvel, and then we became friends during that period. And then he got Ultimates, and we trade work, and I was just like, dude, this is amazing. But this book, I can't say enough good things about it. It's such a pure book, and it's very much about it. I'm not. I won't pitch it, but it's of the moment, and yet it's not in any way. It's not. It's so universal, and yet it's so timely. All of it. It's really about making sense of the trauma of living in this moment, and yet it's bombastic, and it's that Martians and aliens, and it's awesome. And the art is just it's just so kaleidoscopic. It's beautiful. And again, like Dennis is one of those up and coming stars that makes me want to write better. I love him. Ram V. I can't say enough good things also about New Gods. I read New Gods.
Ram V's New Gods. Yeah.
Dude, I read it in script. And then did you get a look at the early?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's
Evan
gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah. And it's actually like, so one of the real fun things about being at DC right now is not just kind of doing the Absolute line, but I don't know if I've said this, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but I'm signing up again to stay at DC for like another year plus, not just like writing Absolute Batman, because I would do that anyway, but to sort of continue the role I've been in over the last year plus. Like we're working on it now, so it's not finalized, but I'm just excited to be there. And the role isn't like, like this is what we're doing and these are the books. Instead, it's more just like being in the room and involved to be able to help with the dark side story, the meta story, so it feels like we're really building on it.
Yeah.
We started in All In, getting to sign on to help with, if not right, but help whatever we wind up doing with the event that in a year that sort of is the midpoint of that story, and then the following year of sort of really culminating that story. And so what that allows me to do isn't just kind of build an event or this and that, but it gives me an excuse, and it justifies being in the room with editorial to be able to talk about all the cool new books we're doing. And I love talking to, like, we're friends. A lot of them were friends 15 years now. But it just gives me like, it justifies me taking, also like, I have a real job then to be able to be like, I'm not just in this room for 2 hours listening, but I'm part of the team. And so what makes me really excited about that is to be able to figure out ways officially of really sort of making sure that some of the books that deserve center stage, like New Gods, are at center stage, and also building things that tie into this dark side story, where it makes sense for them, where it doesn't, don't worry about it. And so Rom has been an amazing collaborator, and I can't wait for him to really level up. Not that he's already superstar, but like level up in terms of his architectural building at DC with me and with Mark Waid. And so I love this. Like this is fun for me. I mean, the mood at DC is great right now. The people, we all feel energized. We get along. There isn't the same kind of chaos or conflict that I think was there for a while, and of no one's fault, not throwing anyone under a bus, but just because of a lot of, machination, corporate machinations and different personalities and everything. Right now it just feels like, look, we're all just having fun and making stuff that we believe in, and we're building towards a collaborative sort of meta story or mega story that will, span through 26, but give us some really great touch points in 25.
Nice.
So yeah, so I can crow about everything because it's part of my job now.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I mean, it's nice because it gets you into that space that I think you're really good at, which is championing the line, championing comics in general, and championing your fellow creators as well.
Thanks, man.
Can we tease a little bit about other Absolute books that are coming out? I know obviously Flash is coming out from
Nick
Robles,
Flash.
but
it's so good. Like Absolute Flash is like one of the, like, we have some that are really like Absolute Martian Manhunter is a very big break from what you've seen from Martian Manhunter, and yet it's oddly very, very true to core. But it's a leap when you get into it. The way, some books like in the Ultimate line are bigger leaps than others, and I feel it's extremely user friendly. Like you'll get in and it's an incredibly easy read, and yet it also it recombines a lot of ideas in different ways. Whereas Flash is very, very where it's very straight ahead, but where it's brand new is in its complete freshness. So for example, every Flash run is so built on legacy.
Yeah.
And what Jeff came in pitching was like, there's no Flash before Wally. There's no Jay Garrick. There's no Barry. It's what if the Flash started now, and what would the Speed Force be if it began or was discovered in this moment now? And how do we begin it in a way that doesn't have this shadow over it, so that every character, Grodd, all of these characters feel like they're born in this moment. There's no kind of long history. And so it's all about that kind of like start and run. And it feels, it's so kinetic and so inviting and fun. It's a bright, fun book, like in all those ways. And Nick's art is just, Nick Robles is just awesome. And very young. Like this, Wally is so stylish too. He looks awesome. Like, and the rogues look awesome. And then the Al Ewing's Green Lantern is another kind of big swing away from, like, I'll tell you like what Al's pitch was. It was 2 years ago at New York Comic Con, and we were on a balcony together, and I was telling him we were thinking about doing this Absolute Universe. Did he have any ideas? And he was like, oh, I have this idea for a Green Lantern one. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Go for it. And by the way, I found out, he called me the next day to be like, I have bad news. I have COVID. I was like, oh,
you're like, we're just talking
like this. And I made it out okay. But it was like, we were talking like super intense like this on a balcony in New York. And he was like, and he has, if you've ever heard him talk, he's got a very deep voice. He's British, and it's very commanding, very different than mine. And he was like talking about how what he would want to do is really lean into the light of really keep everything core. But instead of the Green Lanterns being space police, what if they're almost like the space outlaws? And I was like, okay, go on. And he was sort of like, well, what if light itself is almost like a rebellious thing being chased by the dark? Because light is born of darkness, the Big Bang, and then runs as fast as it can or goes before the dark catches it, right? And I was like, great, and so what is the light, though? It's willpower. He's like, well, what if it's, it is itself faith in life, faith in humanity. it is hope, but hope is force of will. And therefore, if the light is not just sort of a core, but instead the light is I'm giving away too much. I gotta stop. I was about to say
It's
something where I'm
cool.
like, it's really cool. It's a reimagining of the concept, but it's extremely true to core, like where it's about, willpower and faith and the light being a uniting factor against the black hand. All the characters are in it. Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, Joe Mullane, Kyle, like all the main characters are in it from very early, and it's really like it has that kind of cosmic horror, Immortal Hulk. What is Abin Sur? What is the Green Lantern? Why is it here? Why is it testing us to see if we have willpower? What is it? And so it's a really big reinvention.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're trying different things. Like, so if you think of like, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman really reinvent sort of the circumstances under which the characters come up so that it's much harder for them. And sort of in doing so, it gives us like a new way of making the characters resonant for this moment, because the circumstances often reflect things that are important to us about them standing up for now.
Yeah.
These next 3 books almost like take sort of really different angles on the characters. So it's not just about their origin or the context in which they're born. They reimagine a lot of things about like the whole sort of, the whole mythology itself.
Exactly.
From like as a starting point. So they're great. I mean, I can't say enough good things. And then we have 2 more books that'll be in the 3rd wave. They're by one is written by Che Grayson, who is a friend and an amazing aspiring or not aspiring, but rising star in comics, and Pornsak, also Pinochet, who's a longtime friend, amazing writer. He wrote The Good Asian and a couple other great series, but he's like, out of control great. And so they both have books that we'll announce soon that will be on the other side of the 2nd wave. And that'll kind of shore up the line for the first year and a half. And then we'll see how we do, and then some of the books are like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are all ongoings. Flash, I won't say they're all like, everything is an ongoing except a couple of books that we will announce as miniseries when they're announced.
Okay.
But we're going to play around and see, like, we want to we have some ideas for 4th wave stuff if we have room and people really keep buying stuff. And if not, maybe we'll make room elsewhere, figure stuff out. But it's a really fun moment. It's all that. It's like what pitches, what books feel really exciting. And there's some really cool stuff coming in the main line that I wish I could spoil for you. But I think they're going to be solicited like any moment now. But there are a couple really big creators coming over who haven't done a lot of DC stuff, who are going to be doing some really exciting books in the main line as well.
Nice.
Coming off of, December, January launches.
Oh, cool. How good do you feel with not just the return of Vertigo, but to see James Tynion IV be at the helm of that line?
Oh, so good. I mean, Vertigo, James told me about that like a while back.
Sure.
And Chris did too. And I was like, we both like really teared up because Vertigo, I mean, when we became friends like 15 years ago and I was pitching to Vertigo with American Vampire, all we talked about was like, oh, we'll never actually get into Vertigo. Vertigo's the best place, or whatever. And when I went in and met Karen Berger in her office, and she had statues of Swamp Thing and Sandman, and I mean, I was like, this could be the end of my career, and I would be happy. You know what I mean?
I do.
So it really mattered to James that, he said to me, he's like, do you know what it means? He showed me the picture. He's like, because I didn't know about the star, the logo either for DC, the new logo.
Yeah.
But they gave him so they showed him the cover of Nice House on the Lake, and it had that logo and it had the Vertigo logo.
Yeah.
And so he showed it to me and I was like, oh, it's nice. They're doing like a retro week, and he was like, no, this is the real dress. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, they're bringing Vertigo back and I get to be a part of it and this. And I was like, oh my Lord. And that's the DC logo. It was like, what time are we living through? So it feels like an embarrassment of riches. And I was just texting with him. He's in England right now for Thought Bubble.
Nice.
Very, very funny. Yeah. I mean, but it means the world to both of us. And I can't say enough good things about Chris Conroy, who's heading it. He was at Vertigo, like I said, long ago, and he means as much to him as any of us, if not more. So, I'd be very thrilled to do more stuff with them and be there too. And, a lot of faith in them. And they have a whole new approach to doing creator owned stuff, so in terms of the rights and all that too, deal. Yeah. So it's different than it was before. So it's, if you're interested, it's definitely worth checking out because they're really good people there. And, it's kind of a brand new era for them.
That's exciting, man. I'm really looking forward to it. My wife is a huge Vertigo fan as well, so she was just like, what? Like, that was a really fun, exciting announcement. And dude, that dress, you were totally right about, like, just seeing the Bullet logo plus the Vertigo logo all in one thing. I'm like, man, that's gonna be dope.
It's brutal. It's like too much. The embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
You see it.
Seeing the Bullet logo on the Absolute books is so interesting as well, because it's just kind of like the old meets the new, but like the classic. Right? Yeah, it gives it more gravitas, like a little bit.
That's the right. Yeah, dude, it gives it a gravitas. And like, again, I don't know. I just feel really, I really lucky to be a part of DC right now and big comics right now. I mean, I'll go back. I'm sure like in a while, I'll decide I want to go back and do more creator owned and do that. Like I'm still doing all these distillery things, but I mean like full time to do creator owned. But right now to be able to be a part of this in this moment, I'm just really proud, like of to be one part of like, the line when there's so many people excited and doing their own thing within DC, and then look across the aisle at all these other companies licensed, not where everybody seems to be taking big swings, and people are really responding to it with like G.I. Joe selling 200,000+.
I know, right?
And the success of even smaller books like Feral at Image and Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees selling out like multiple times. Like people are just excited. What they don't want is for you to be doing bullshit or where you're doing like, hey, this is my, Netflix pitch, or hey, this is my like my series that I'm doing as a, quick one-off, or, they want you to take risks and experiment. And that doesn't mean you have to do like big books. Like some of the books that I'm proudest of over the last year were some of the smallest ones that I did, like some of them at IDW, the Wildfires.
Oh my God.
Dark Spaces, super proud of those. Like, and then the Comixology books, like some of the ones that are smaller books at Dark Horse, like Book of Evil, which is part prose, So it's not about like, oh, it has to be this huge epic thing. I just mean they don't want you to take for granted how awesome comics is. They want you to come in and be like, I care about this book, Yeah. And that's it. Do that.
Yeah. Tell us more about You Won't Feel a Thing from Distillery with you and Jock to reteam.
Oh, yeah. Dude. Oh, man. Well, so this was like a crazy passion project where like essentially like Distillery was like, look, we'd like you to do another book after White Boat, which we're just finishing now. And, Jock is free. Do you want to do something with Jock? And I was like, well, I saw Jock at DenverCon. So I was going to see him at DenverCon. So I was like, listen, let's meet up. I'm going to rent a car, because I knew he had never been to the Rocky Mountains, and he always said he wanted to go. So I was like, meet you. We'll go to Denver, and then on Sunday we're going to drive 2 hours out and go to like Pikes Peak, like, top of the mountain. And let's talk about the Witches animated thing, and I want to pitch you this like crazy book. So all right. So flew out, drove out, and we were up on the mountain, and he brought a whiskey. And then we got to the top of the mountain, and the air is so thin, dude. We couldn't even open the whiskey. It was like too. Yeah. It was just great. We were both ready to pass out. So I was like, oh. And both of us were going through the same thing. So like, what it was the for me, the last 6 months have been like really rough. Creatively, work wise, some of the best stuff of my life. Like I'm so thrilled by the Witches writer's room and the experience and the cartoon coming out next year, and also the DC stuff. But the problem was that I don't remember if I said this last time I was on, but the writer's strike in Hollywood pushed the writer's room on top of the DC stuff because it moved everything by about 6 months. And so for the last 6 months, the writer's room was 5 months. It's been like this double duty of like managing all the work at DC plus this plus Distillery. And so I just felt like I missed the entire summer with the kids. I
Yeah.
missed everything with them. And so I was having this feeling of like, God, but if I can just pull this off, if I can just do this absolute Batman thing, and I love it, and it's like my original passion and this. And so I was telling Jock, and I'm like, look, I want to do a serial killer book about a guy. I have this idea about a guy who, like, it's one case that haunted him, and it entered his life when he was too young. Like he wants to marry his high school girlfriend. This is the 70s, 80s. And she's leaving for the summer, and he goes over to her house to propose one night, and she's brutally murdered. And he goes over and opens the door, and it's this horror scene. And it winds up, after he's suspected of it and he's cleared, it winds up inspiring him to become a police officer and then a special agent. And he hunts killers for the next like 40 years of his life. But this case is never solved. And he creates all these theories about it, that it's actually he's a very prolific serial killer. He calls the Chatter Man, who overkills just in total abandon and frenzy, and just kills people in these horrible ways, but takes a tooth from each. Everyone is so horribly disfigured that nobody really notices. The detectives don't really pay attention, but he starts to notice that one tooth is missing from every person. They can't find it, and they don't know where it went. And so he starts to believe that this guy's collecting them and making a mask with this thing, and nobody believes him. And he does have a run-in with this guy. And so he knows he's out there, but there's no proof. And so he has this very illustrious career, except for this one blemish where nobody agrees that there's someone out there killing people under this guise. And now in the present, he has a brain tumor. And so he goes back, he's brought back to his hometown where he goes to in Montana. And he is in an assisted living place for the end of his life. And that's where it starts. And what happens is there's a murder in town, and he comes to believe that this guy wasn't just someone drifting through that killed his girlfriend and changed his whole life when he was young, but is actually someone he grew up with from town. He's going to solve it before he loses his mind. And so it's a really, really like twisted horror, gory, bloody, scary comic, but it's also like built from a place where Jock and I were both of us felt like we missed all this time with our families chasing this one thing that for me was like, if I go back to Batman and if I decide I'm going to do this book that I didn't think I was going to do, and I can pull it off, it will make everything kind of make sense, like, of this. And that's what this guy in his situation wrong-headedly believes, or maybe right-headedly, you don't know. Like, if he catches this guy, a lot of the decisions he's made over the past years will make sense, and the end of his life will have meaning, and the narrative will add up. Yeah. But it's a very scary story. So it's very it's pure R-rated, really dark. And Jock is the kind of person where, and so he was like, yes, let's do it. And then we were both like ready to pass out. I got so sunburned also, like we were up on this mountain, and I didn't even realize, because we were up, it wasn't even that sunny, but you're so high up that this half of my face got like all red from telling him this story. But he he's the kind of person that you really you work with when you have a story that you feel really like uncomfortable about, because it's kind of autobiographical, like Witches and that. And for me, and Book of Evil, like it really is like, he's so good at encouraging you to put your deepest fears, and his art is so reflective of that. It's very realistic, and yet it bends around emotion in these creepy ways. So Jock is a perfect partner, I think, for this one. And the whole idea of You Won't Feel a Thing is the place he's in is called Harmless House, because it's Harmless, Montana. John Reeder, the detective, the main character, and he's there to sort of live out the end of his life. And their whole motto is, it's the gentlest years. It's not, you won't feel anything. It's all good. It's all, he wants to feel, he wants to solve this case, and it's going to be ugly. Nice. So it's fun. That's that book. Yeah. And I can say also, like, there's so many books right now from Distillery you should pick up, like Blood Brothers Mother and Life and Spectrograph and The City Beneath Her Feet. James's new book with Elsa is like, it's so good. I read it early, and it's like, out of control. And Jamie McKelvey's book. I just read the first issue of that and was like, wow, this is amazing. It's like Victorian horror. And I don't know. I love what Distillery is doing.
Yeah.
So I hope we'll go support Somna. And yeah, I mean, they're just
Time waits. It's good stuff.
another.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention you and Jack Snyder are making a book with Comixology called By a Thread with Valeria Favoccia.
Yeah, she's they're amazing, and we're doing our second season. Yeah, so it'll we just got the first issue layouts, and they're amazing. So my son is gonna be way better than me. He already is, I'm sure, but he's 17. And
how excited are you, man? You get to work with your kid on like a passion project like this, and put him out there. Like, is he excited? Like, does he feel like is he kind of intimidated? I mean, I assume he's been to cons with you before and seen that kind of vibe and that environment.
Yeah, he's been going since he was little. He actually wrote his whole college essay about it, and it was really beautiful. It was like, because I was like, oh no, here it comes. Like, my dad dragged me to convention and so on. And instead, it was all about, it was great. It was about how he's like, it was funny. It was like, I was raised among superheroes, and it's this whole thing. And he went into it, and it was like,
it's a good line.
What he loves about cons, which was so really moving to hear, honestly, was that it was exciting to be around people who were from all different walks of life, all different demographics, all different political spectrum, everything, but that were coming together over stories they were passionate about and found inspiration in. And that this was a space where you could find people that you bonded with over these narratives that meant something to you. And so it's great. He's an amazing kid. I feel like he's way better than I was at his age, which is frustrating. I'm almost like jealous of him. But he's like, he's also like, if he wants to do comics, like, I'm incredibly excited for him to do that. And if tomorrow he was like, I want to do something else, great. But seems really set on it. And he is really, I'm just trying not to be like, I mean, I really want him to do it, but I also don't want to push him. So exactly. I kind of, I just want it to be like, I was like, look, if you want to go be a rock climber, go be a rock climber. You want to be whatever you want to be, I support you.
Yeah.
So yes, now I'm like on the couch, dude, talking to you. Like, I feel bad.
Well, what is
yeah.
By a Thread? Like, what is and where did it come from? Was it idea where he was like, Dad, I got this content?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. He was like, Dad, I'd like to do. I was thinking about doing my own comic or like with a friend, and and he was like, I was like, what's the idea? And he was like, well, what if this kind of alien substance like bubbles up from beneath the crust of the earth and starts covering the earth at like 100 miles in every direction a day, and whatever it touches, it rots out and kills. And people don't know what to do. And the only thing that will stop it, because he's like, if it came from the center of the earth or early in there, there's a lot of carbon. So what if it was diamond is the only thing that will resist it? Everything else eventually gets kind of corroded and rots. And so people are desperate suddenly to make, produce, because you can mass produce like diamond and make these pillars, and they try and make like a diamond lattice. And anyway, so he was like, the story takes place 10 years after this project has failed, and people live on the remnants of these kind of diamond stumps that they call needles, where they've piled all this kind of living space on top of, and they're threaded together with these cables. And the stuff is below, and if it touches you, it eats you. But now all of a sudden, the rumor is it's starting to produce creatures and things out of itself. And I was just like, this sounds amazing, and he was like, oh, well, I don't know where I could do it. And so I was like, well, let's pitch it to Comixology, but write up a pitch, like write up a real pitch. You're going to write it, like I'll look at it and I'll help you with it and I'll oversee it, but it'll be like you, and like, let's find. And so it really was his thing, and I'm just kind of overlooking it. And, I give him a lot of advice when it comes to like, look, I don't think you want to use narration here. And sometimes he'll be like, I still want to use it. I'm like, great. But I'll be like, the effect of this tool is usually this. And if you do it here, it might double down. But overall, I let him, whatever he wants to do goes with it. And it's more of just sort of me trying to provide kind of mentorship But he's in great hands. Valeria is amazing, and Whitney, the colorist, is amazing, and the book did really well for them. So yeah, they're doing a second season, and
That's great.
yeah, I can't wait. I'm very excited for him, and he's off to college next year, so he'll be doing it from there.
Wow.
So.
That's awesome, man. Well, there's so much more to talk about, but let's put a pin in it for now until the next thing. But I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for you. I'm thrilled that like these big swings tend to pay off, particularly the Absolute world, but also you know, I'm really looking forward to checking out that Destroyer book and more. Is there anything else that you want to kind of like throw out there for people besides the class?
Well, no, I mean, yeah. So if this goes out today, the class is tonight, Thursday night at 9:30, and it's free. One of the things in really like, you know, in rough times for me that really helps is teaching, or trying to, yeah, just I've always loved it. It's gotten me through some rough times in my life. I think before I broke in and when I first broke in, and was like Batman was a lot of stress because it was brand new. And so I've tried to keep that going, and I do a class called Comic Writing 101, and I do it through the Substack newsletter I have. And we're going to start the new semester tonight because I haven't been able to do it in a while because of the Witches Writers Room, but we're starting, and it's going to be every month. And tonight we're talking about reimagining superheroes. We're going to look at Batman through the years. So I'm going to look at Batman in the 60s and 70s, and then 80s and 90s,
Cool.
and then talk about Absolute. And we're going to have Kelly Thompson on, who from Absolute Wonder Woman, to talk about reinventions that have really inspired her over the years, and then also talk about Absolute Wonder Woman, of course. And yeah, and then if you wind up signing up for like all you have to do is sign up for the newsletter, and then the link is in there, and then you get it for free, and you can just come to the class and see it live. And then if you sign up for the paid subscription, which is like only $7 a month, then you get access to like all of the classes we've done. We've done about 30 at this point over the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And they're all like, you know, James Tynion is on one, and Donnie Cates and Chip Zdarsky, and other ones are just me doing a topic like villains or monsters or superhero comics and all of that. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to bring it back. And again, tonight's free. All you have to do is go to Best Jacket Press. I think it's, what is it? It's like,
yeah, I think it's Best Jacket Press.
There's like a bunch of different ones that you can go to and then funnel into it. But if you look up Our Best Jacket, like yours and mine, Best Jacket, and Jacket has two T's because Jacket is Jack and Emmett, my two sons. And then I have a third son, Quinn, that came after the company.
Yep.
But I don't know how, my wife was like, you could make a Jacket with a Q. And I was like, that's just way too confusing. Like,
the search algorithm alone will never work. But I'll put a link in the description and in the chat for folks to just click it if you want to just go there directly.
Yeah. So if you want to come by, it'll be a lot of fun. You can ask questions, but it's a discussion and it's interactive. And then you get access, sign up, paid for all the ones we've done.
That's dope, man.
So
well, congratulations. It's so great to talk to you and catch up. And I'm just thrilled to see the next thing, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, brother. And let me just say to you, like, you know, you're a huge part of this moment going so well, not just for DC, but everything. Like, your enthusiasm for comics is like unflagging through rough times, which we know each other as friends. So we both know we've been through, and also good times. And it's really nice to see you so in the mix with everything at a moment when things are really peaking. So we all really appreciate what you do, Sal, and everybody out there. Like, we all love Sal, and like, we also watching this, like, love you guys. We really appreciate the audience, and thank you for showing up. I look forward, you know me, I text Sal. I'm always I love coming on here and talking to you and all of it. So it's a blast, and you got a great audience. So we appreciate it.
You make it easy, dude. Thank you.